truly defines a year? Is it the politics, the world events, the headlines, Sergeant Stubby and American Hero? For me, I always define years by what movies released within that specific year. In terms of overall cinema years, we have 2023, 2019, 2017, and 2014. These are often described as amazing years for film, while years like 2016, 2021, and 2011 are seen as weaker years. It all comes down to this: quality over quantity. Many will tell you you can't have one without the other, but that does happen. And sometimes you get years like 2023 with Oppenheimer, Across the Spider-Verse, Past Lives, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. But then you have years like 2013, which wasn't necessarily a bad year, but just had less quality and less quantity. But more often than not, one or the other happens. 2021 is often seen as a quantity over quality. Any year that releases Space Jam LeBron's version is a bad year. 2019 was a quality over quantity, with stuff like Knives Out and Rocket Man, but often those would be spaced out enough for us to appreciate the movies more. Unfortunately, it looks like 2024 is heading the 2021 route, but that's for another time. Today I want to discuss something very special with you all: animation. I know it's no surprise to see a guy in his early 20s on the internet bitching about kids movies, but here's the thing. I often like to judge kids movies as kids movies. They're not supposed to be gripping, hard-told stories about harsh realities and tough choices. Dude, I watched Despicable Me 4 because of Grunier, not because I wanted to feel something. Kids movies are just that: kids movies. Now, of course, I don't mind if a kid's movie goes with darker themes, as I grew up with movies that often challenge me. But if a kid's movie is just mindless entertainment, what's wrong with that? Such I judge animation differently than overall cinema. And weirdly, I find for overall cinema years, they often differ from the years for animation. 2023 is obviously an alright year for animation, considering Across the Spider-Verse, Boy and the Heron, Mutant Mayhem, and Rock Dog 3 all came out in that year. But where 2016 was seen as a weak year for film with minor exceptions, we got Kubo and the Two Strings, Moana, Your Name, Zootopia, Kung Fu Panda 3, Finding Dory, Bobby the Hedgehog. And you know what? To all the Illumination haters out there, I really couldn't care less what you think. They had 2 C-tier at best movies come out that year, which is good for them. Sing is actually more of a B tier for me, but that's for another day. And of course, 2009, one of the best years for animation yet. Shafrel's Productions already has a video on that, so instead, I decided to look at a particularly weak year for animated movies, and I found 3 solid candidates: 2006, 2012, and 2018. And while any of these years could be videos in their own right, the one I went with was a strange one: 2018. Now don't get me wrong, this was still a decent year for the stuff that came out. I'd say at least half of these movies are actually pretty good. But there is one issue. Remember how I said there's often a quality over quantity focus? This year was definitely quality over quantity. And with some of these movies not even being that great, you can see why this year wasn't that notable. That being said, it's hard to say nothing came out, so let's see what did come out. This is 2018, animation's weakest year. A pure example of this year not being that bad, we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You know, funny enough, if you were to look at my letterbox, Xander Zandini at Official Xander, if you are so kind to follow me, you'll see that the one list I've made on that account of my favorite movie from every year I've been alive, you'll see my favorite film of 2018 was Into the Spider-Verse. Funny enough, 5 years later, I would name Across the Spider-Verse my favorite movie of 2023. You got a lot of pressure beyond the Spider-Verse. However, the first film is a film I've mentioned I like, but I've never talked about fully because, everyone's mentioned how great it is. If I did videos back in 2018, I probably would have talked about it more. I was 16 at the time, so I don't think that really matters anyhow. So instead of discussing the film itself, why don't I just talk about the one thing I've been able to pick out of the entire movie? I'm serious, the one problem I have. I feel the other variations could have gotten more screen time. Don't get me wrong, the stuff we do have with Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, and Spider-Noir, they're all fantastic. And the scene of all of them talking about their Uncle Ben in this case, it's pretty damn good. Weirdly, there's 2 Spider-Man movies with great scenes like that. I liked them so much that not only did Across the Spider-Verse make me realize how little they got to shine, but the lack of them in that movie really made me realize further why they worked here and why I wanted more of them. But I get it, it's Miles, Peter, and Gwen's the story, not theirs, and for what we got, I guess I'm just bitching. Honestly, if my biggest issue with a film is that likable characters don't get enough screen time, I got nothing. I guess Across the Spider-Verse made me realize this is a very tame story, which 16-year-old me wouldn't have been able to pick that up anyhow, so let's move on. Incredibles 2 was, at the time, my favorite Pixar sequel. It just screamed with vibrant colors, charisma, characters both new and old that felt like they never left, the kids still being the same age. Okay, that sucked, but hopefully they take advantage of that potentially awesome plot with the 3rd movie. I thought Pixar finally did it. They made the best sequel they've made since Toy Story 2. And then I watched it 6 years later for this video, and I realized I was not only wrong, but super wrong. Incredibles 2 is definitely not a bad movie. For everything it is, it delivers. But I guess I just looked over a lot of issues that didn't really do the film any favors. Anyways, the film's plot is actually alright. Sure, it's a little rehashed considering the superheroes were just allowed to be heroes again, only for them to get retconned 20 minutes in. While the first movie followed Bob doing the hero work and the family being in the dark, this time it's Helen, and thank God, oh mama. And I don't want to hear anybody judging me, she's human, and come on. A lot of people felt weird about Helen being the focus this time, but honestly, it worked better for me. And it fully confirms that Incredibles 3 will be about the kids. I swear to God, Pixar, if you don't give us Incredibles 3 with the kids, I will riot. But here's problem number 1 that I completely ignored, yet everyone hated from the beginning. The twist villain sucks. I initially thought, okay, it's not the Frozen or Big Hero 6 twist villain, so maybe it isn't that bad. And then I realized comparing Syphilis to Krabs isn't exactly the best comparison. Hell, Puss in Boots did a better twist villain, and that wasn't even supposed to be a serious twist. Thing is, without the twist villain, this was almost an amazing film. And it's not a bad film because of it, but I feel the climax of this movie doesn't compare to the original. I don't know, I looked over these problems, but even then, Incredibles 2 is definitely not a bad movie, or even a mediocre movie. It's still one of Pixar's best sequels, but, yeah, I mean, Cars 2 was a spy movie. And this was bread. Isle of Dogs is funny considering that it reminds us that even Wes Anderson's worst movies are B-tier and worst. Yeah, movies like Darjeeling Limited, Life Aquatic, Asteroid City, and Bottle Rocket might not be Wes Anderson's best, but all 4 of those movies are usually listed as the best movies of the last 30 years. I'm not saying Wes Anderson is a perfect director, but he often allows for some creative and artistic films that, even if they're not great movies, can still offer its worth visually. And with Isle of Dogs, I think that can be applied. I'd say Isle of Dogs is better than all 4 of the movies I just listed, but it isn't my favorite from Anderson. It's still creative though, I mean, I always appreciate stop motion. But Wes Anderson's other stop motion film, Fantastic Mr. Fox...
But there's something kind of fantastic about that, isn't there?
Say that again?
...is a film that I really deeply appreciate. I'd argue it's one of my favorite animated movies, and one of my favorites from Wes Anderson. And Fantastic Mr. Fox had charisma and charm that was unique to it. At times, Isle of Dogs does its own thing, but often it can feel like it's trying to take so much from Fantastic Mr. Fox, which isn't a bad thing considering they were made by the same person, but it makes it just kind of blend with everything else. It's not bad, I need to emphasize, this is a solid film overall, and I recommend it fully. I just wish it was a bit more unique. But even then, I can't say this is that bad. Imagine Dragons song detected, movie disregarded. Okay, that's harsh, but really, I hear a lot of people hate Ralph Breaks the Internet. I'm indifferent on it. It's not good, I just did a video that included my thoughts on the first movie, and this sequel is nowhere near the level of that, but it's okay. The internet world is very cool, but also very unexplored. It feels like it's Disney making a movie about the internet, the same way that Sony made a movie about emojis, and oh god! But hey, they do make fun of themselves, and I kind of commend them on that. Though the jab at Merida feels unfair.
Lang me your lumdikke me a moose nearly your gun away a teardrop in his eye.
She's from the other studio.
You fuckers have no right to bully Pixar when you guys released Raya and the Last Dragon, alright? And some references feel outdated.
What the heck? Dang internet!
How am I supposed to groom children now? I don't think it's necessarily bad, there's a few good things, but Ralph and Penelope's relationship feels completely botched here. And Gal Gadot's in it. Great. I guess it's just like many internet critics said. It's completely and utterly average. Painfully so considering the quality of the first film. Dr. Seuss adaptations can be very tricky. The books are very well known and such, you have to know which creative liberties work and which ones don't. Something like Green Eggs and Ham on Netflix did this perfectly and produced 2 solid seasons, all things considered. And I'd even say Horton Hears a Who, which I just discussed a few videos back, was very average, but hey, with films like
There Was This Cat That I Knew,
and most certainly
That's a Woman,
you probably find it hard to see the positives. That being said, the 2018 Grinch is mediocre. It's certainly not a bad movie, but, you know, Illumination is 0-2 on the Dr. Seuss adaptations. Here's the thing, that whole spiel I just had about Seuss adaptations taking creative liberties, this one takes some of the most boring creative liberties I've ever seen. The way it shows the Grinch's backstory feels bland and empty. The Grinch's backstory in the Jim Carrey movie at least felt oddly familiar. Getting bullied and hating Christmas. There you go. Here, they explain so much yet so little. Also, I'm not a fan of Cindy Lou Who here. In the Jim Carrey movie, they toyed with the idea of her not knowing what Christmas is because she's surrounded by a commercialized version of it. Hell, there's a song on the soundtrack about that. Her dad is really ugly. It feels really genuine too. It never felt forced or lame. But here, she's a tomboy because I'm pretty sure that's one of Illumination's favorite characters to write. She's so bland and forgettable that I actually completely forgot she was in the movie or what her story was. Oh, she wants to help her overworking mom. It's just boring. But it does get a pass because it has a pentatonic song, albeit out of scenic f***ing nowhere. Tyler, the Creator, usually cooks, but this Grinch song did not slay bestie.
Shut the hell up!
Sherlock Gnomes
Sucks.
If I did a 2018 ranking, trust this would be close to the bottom, and definitely the worst animated movie of the year. A sequel to Romeo and Juliet. See, Romeo and Juliet blows, but here's the thing, it presents itself in a certain way uniquely. And honestly, the Elton John songs, while not all of them felt genuine, felt perfect for the film, including the original one with Lady Skywalker Saga. But here's the problem about this film. It is a pun. It is a straight-up pun film. The only joke is, what if Romeo and Juliet took place with gnomes? But it has its quirks, and I guess that's passable. Blue. This film, however, I can't forget. This is a straight-up bad animated movie. I know I said at the beginning how kids' movies should be judged as kids' movies, but come on, kids deserve better than this. And talk about Johnny Depping this movie to hell. This was one of the weakest uses of Depp's otherwise insane talent. And Mary J. Blige, wait, the Mary J. Blige was in this? Then how the hell did I forget that? That proves that this film is just existing, and to me, it proves to be one of the weakest in this already weak year. I gotta say, I wondered why this one was so heavily talked about back in 2018. But then I looked up this film's cast and holy shit! Channing Tatum, Zendaya, Common, Danny DeVito, Jimmy Tatro, Gina Rodriguez, Jack Quaid, LeBron. So man, this really great cast. Certainly the film doesn't suck, right? It sucks. Smallfoot is just kind of a standard kids movie. But unlike Sherlock Gnomes, this one is harmless and has its moments. The cast does provide some good delivery, but for the most part, it plays it pretty safe. I guess there's nothing bad in it, and being harmless is ultimately better than being so dumb it's brain rot. But considering this AAA cast, I guess I hope for more. You know it's a weak year for animation when Aardman releases something and you had no idea? Early Man is quite a strange flick. It's a stop-motion film with a caveman, and all in all, almost feels like a good movie, but a lot of things hold this movie back. I don't really remember much about the characters, and the plot isn't quite Aardman's greatest. But I always do appreciate stop-motion. I don't know, Aardman's been in a bit of a hole recently. Dawn of the Nugget wasn't that good, and I know it's unfair to always expect greatness from Aardman, but you know, you release Curse of the Were-Rabbit and see where people expect you to be. This movie is ultimately just weak. And you know what sucks about the characters? How they're voiced by Eddie Redmayne, Tom Hiddleston, Maisie Williams, and Richard Ayoade, just to name the main guys.
Oh, it's pointy.
Oh, Trevor.
Not to mention one of them is voiced by the director. Cool. Actually, you know what sucks about this director? How he's the one behind Chicken Run, multiple Wallace and Gromit projects, including Curse of the Were-Rabbit and some of the early shorts like The Wrong Trousers and A Grand Day Out. You'd think that with his history this would be better, but it's not. I see it as harmless, and that's ultimately okay. Hotel Transylvania 3 is a fucking hilarious movie because I've discussed it in a Halloween video, and I really don't think it's that bad. But it's not that good either. This was the moment that the movies clearly lost their momentum and just went with wacky scenarios for Adam Sandler Vampire. I like the second movie, but I admit it was one of those movies that just started to go to the comedy side rather than the first movie with the blend of comedy and slow moments. But I still liked Hotel Transylvania 2 and definitely view it as a decent enough sequel. But Hotel Transylvania 3 not only came out in summer, you know, a beautiful time for a movie like this to come out considering the main character's allergic to the sun, but it goes completely goofy and doesn't really go for a cohesive plot or story. Again, really, nothing terrible here. It's the weakest of the films, but honestly, it's still an alright experience. Kids will like it, but unlike the first two films, it's a bit more for kids than it is for kids and adults. The final film of the night is Teen Titans Go! Movie. Teen Titans Go to the movies, you would expect, wouldn't be very good considering the show it's based on, but man, is this funny. Like, I was genuinely laughing hard at some of these scenes. It felt like they really did their homework and saw why the show didn't work and almost did a complete 180 just for this movie. It feels like the writers of the show came together and wanted to make a genuinely great film. And to me, that's what they did. It's funny, Aquaman came out this year as well, and guess what the best DC movie was?
It's my superhero movie. It's all about me.
This truly was a highlight of an otherwise weak year for animation, and considering all that, I truly call this decent. I don't know, maybe there was better animation for animated shows? I'll check, let me check real quick.
Apple, an onion, today's...
Okay, I just want to make sure. Bye!